Alright, hey, my name is Jason. I'm going to show you guys how to wrap your hands today. Obviously using hand wraps. This is mainly for boxing and kickboxing. However, it can also be used for different forms of martial arts, just to lock your wrists. That way you don't end up spraining or breaking anything. I use Century brand 116-inch hand wraps. You can use whatever you feel that you wish to. I use 116s because I have slightly smaller hands, not enough to actually constitute getting 160s or 180s quite yet. This is also good for beginners who are just learning how to wrap their hands, because then you don't end up with a whole lot of extra at the very end. Just takes away from trying to figure out what to do with the rest of it. So what you want to do is obviously unravel your hand wraps. I'm going to show you how to do both hands. It's essentially just a mirror of each other, but I'm going to do both just for people who need help with both. It can be difficult the first time if you try and do it the exact same way. So what you want to remember is that the seam that has the ribbon on it, you want that to be pressed up against your palm. This is important at the end to make sure that it velcros on properly, so that you do not see the ribbon seam on the part that sticks out. So you want to wrap that around your wrist, like so. Some people will recommend that you wrap it 2-3 times, depending on however much of a wrist lock you want. I'm going to do it slightly different, because I found that I can get a good lock on my wrists a different way. So what you want to do is wrap it once, and then bring it up along the back, between the thumb and the index, like so. Get a nice tight pull on there, not too tight where you're going to lose circulation, but tight enough so that you can feel the tension on there. So it'll look like this. And you're going to want to wrap your wrist one more time. And then wrap it around the back of your hand and across the palm again. So you'll get a bit of a tight lock on your wrist. You'll start to feel it pulling right along here and across the webbing of your finger. This is good. It just means that you've got a bit of a pull on there. If it's starting to tingle or feels like more of a pull or more than a pull, you're going to want to re-wrap and try it again. Loosen it up a little bit this time. So from here, you're going to start to wrap around like you're going to wrap around your wrist again. But instead of doing that, you're going to put it along the palm, between the pinky and the ring. Make sure that covers that joint right here, the knuckle. Okay. And once again, just straight down along the back, around the thumb, between the ring and the middle finger. Make sure it covers that knuckle again. Pull it tight this time, and make sure you make a fist. This is just to make sure that it's not too tight, but that you can feel the tension on there. Like so. And then one more time around the thumb, between the index and middle finger. People immediately start to wrap their knuckles from here. I would recommend wrapping it around your wrist one time. This is just to make sure that it locks in, so that your the wrap isn't coming undone from your fingers. Wrap it around there. Come up to the knuckles from the wrist, across the knuckles. Make a fist. Make sure that it's not too tight. Loosen it up if need be. You want to be able to make a tight fist without having to squeeze too hard. Just want a good fist without having to work too hard in your hand for it, pretty much. You're going to wrap that twice. So once going across. Alright, so again from here, from the wrist, come across once, down, under, and around once, and then back to the wrist. Now if you have any extra, I do recommend you go down along your wrist just a short ways. It's about there. This is just to make sure you got a good wrist lock. However, if, like me, you wrap it and it comes out nice and tight with a little extra, you'll have a good wrist lock. You're always going to be able to flex your wrist. This is good. You want to be able to have mobility of your hand, but you want a good wrist lock in there. That way, if you punch something dead on, you're not... If you punch properly, that way you won't bend your wrist, like so. Alright, and for the second one, this can be done with this wrist wrap still on. This is why I say you want to be able to wrap it tight, but loose enough that you still have mobility in your hand. You'll understand why here in a second, because otherwise it makes it very difficult to wrap your other hand. Alright, you want to do the same thing for the second hand. Make sure that ribbon bit is on your palm. If it's not, again, it'll make things difficult at the end when you want to Velcro it. Doesn't make it impossible, just makes it difficult. So you want to wrap your wrist once, come up to the webbing between your thumb and your index, cross there, wrap your wrist another time, and again, thumb and index, wrap across. Now again, just as you're starting to wrap your wrist again, come across the thumb like so. And between the ring and the pinky. Make sure that's nice and tight, not overly tight, because that will set the bounds for everything else that we're going to do. Again, around the thumb, between the ring and the middle. One more time, around the thumb. Now middle and index. This one can be rather difficult as your wrap may want to slide. Try and put it just a little bit lower on your thumb, and that should help you out. Now at this point, you're going to have your knuckles covered, except for this one, but we're about to get to that right now. But you're going to want to wrap your wrist one time. This just helps to hold the finger wrap so it doesn't slide too much. And then come across from the palm up to the knuckles and across the knuckles. Again, make a fist here. Make sure it's not too tight. If you start to feel this pulling in on you, just adjust that a little bit. Across the knuckles, underneath, and across one more time. And then from here, just go back down to your wrist. If, like me, you have no extra, or little extra, just wrap your wrist and lock it in there. If you have quite a bit extra, go ahead and just wrap your wrist nice and tight. You can never have too much padding on your wrist. And now, finished project. You may want to, it's going to slip occasionally. If your wrist wraps start to slide around a little bit, just go ahead and do it again. The most you're ever going to have happen is across the knuckles. And just go ahead and make it a little bit tighter. Not to the point that you can't stand it, but just so that it doesn't slide around. And, as you can see, my hands are wrapped up nice and tight. I still have mobility in my hands, which is what we're aiming for, but not so much that my wrist will just bend if I hit improperly. I mean, obviously if you hit way off, you're going to bend your wrist, but that's always going to happen no matter how well you wrap it. So, that's how you wrap your wrists.